Hi. Welcome to our live event. I'm Faye, and I'm here with Molly.
Hey, guys.
Hi, Molly. So we'd like to congratulate everyone who's taking the MOOC on entering the last week, the final week of the MOOC. And if you're not sure what a MOOC is or what I'm talking about here, the MOOC is a massive open online course that helps prepare you for the TOEFL test. So today, Molly and I are here to go through a question and answer session to give you some tips for success through your TOEFL test journey. And participants from the MOOC actually submitted questions in the form of videos to us. So we'll be playing some of those videos and answering the questions. And all these questions had to do with the speaking section of the test. So that's why we have Molly, our speaking instructor, here. So if you're taking the MOOC, Molly might look familiar to you, and I might as well, since I'm an instructor in the MOOC as well. So we're going to give you some great tips, some insight, some advice. Molly, are you ready to watch a video from a MOOC participant?
Let's do it.
All right, let's see it.
Hello, I'm Antonio from Venezuela. My question is, how your score can be affected if you don't finish your question in the time that is required on the speaking area. I mean, maybe you finish your question in 30 seconds or maybe in 40 seconds. How that can be affect your score? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Antonio, for sending in that question. And I think it's a question that a lot of people are wondering. Is, you know, Molly, as a speaking expert, what would you say? If someone doesn't use the full amount of time, is that necessarily a bad thing?
No, not necessarily. So it's important to know that if you give a full response, cover all the relevant information, and you just happen to finish a little bit early, that's okay. Raters won't penalize you for that. Your score won't be affected. However, if you notice that you're finishing a question or your response very quickly, that's probably a sign that maybe you left something out or you could have added a little more detail. So if that happens, try to think of some additional information or example that you could add to make your response a little more complete. Mm-hmm. Practice is an important thing for this. So before you take the test, I highly recommend you taking some practice questions and timing yourself when you do it so that when you get to the test, you're familiar with what does 45 seconds feel like, what does 60 seconds feel like, and you'll be able to gauge better how much time you have to answer a question.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Molly. And I'll add on there, too, that kind of on the other end of the spectrum, if you run out of time, that won't negatively impact your score either. So, you know, let's say you finish your response and you see you have some time left, so you think you'll add a little more information, give a little more detail. If you get cut off then, it's not going to be a bad thing because you've already given the important information. So when a rater is listening to your response, they'll hear the full response and they won't mark you down for running out of time.
Good point.
Yeah. So we're going to show another video, but first I just want to mention that we'd love to hear your questions too from those of you who are watching live. So put them in the comments, and as we see them come through, we'll answer them as well. So, you know, during the next few minutes, you might want to ask questions about the speaking section, since that's, you know, what we're talking about here, but other questions you have are welcome too. So now let's see our next video from a MOOC participant.
I'm David from Colombia, and this is my question. I have problem developing the ideas I have prepared in the speaking session. I end up sometimes giving a totally different response that I had prepared. So, do you have some advice to better address my speaking answers? Thank you.
Okay, great question. And I think, you know, a lot of people think about that and worry about that because it's easy to kind of lose track of what you're saying or forget what you wanted to say and get a little distracted. It happens to me normally when I'm, you know, not taking a test. So Molly, what advice would you give for preparing to give your response?
That's a good question. I think what you want to do is make sure you use your preparation time to jot down kind of the main ideas that you want to talk about. And it should serve as a kind of outline for your response. So once you start speaking, you want to try to stay on track and cover those points and then fill in with details and examples. Mm-hmm. And again, practice here is really important. So as much as you can before the test, practice speaking just spontaneously in English on a wide variety of topics. And so that way, when you need to do that on test day, you'll feel more comfortable doing so.
Yeah, great tips. Thank you, Molly. We've got another video for you. Let's see what Valentina wants to know.
Hello there, I'm Valentina from Venezuela. My question is, where or how can I practice to the speaking test section? Is there a free page or chat where I could talk about? Thank you in advance.
All right. Thank you, Valentina, for submitting that question. And I think, a lot of people are looking for ways to practice and online resources, especially for the speaking section. So, Molly, where would you direct people?
Well, there are a few different good places to start. One thing that we recommend is doing the TOEFL online practice speaking series. So check that out. There are lots of resources on the web for you to find native speakers or advanced speakers of English who you can talk with. We're actually going to share some websites in the feed so that you can check those websites out with resources for connecting with English speakers from around the world. And if you're taking the MOOC, of course, you'll be able to connect with friends you've made through the MOOC, either on the discussion board or in different social media groups.
Great, yeah, and I'll kind of add on to that obviously the MOOC is a great resource and it's free and it's running now, but we'll have it up again in May if you missed it. And we also have a lot of other ETS resources. So Molly mentioned TOEFL Practice Online. If you go to TOEFLGoAnywhere.org/TOEFL Practice, which we will put a link to in the comments, you can find even more online resources. We have an interactive test sampler, the official guide to the TOEFL test, the TOEFL IBT prep planner, and as Molly said, the TOEFL Practice Online. And speaking of TOEFL Practice Online, if you're taking the MOOC, this is your last chance to get 25% off of any TOEFL Practice Online products you'd like to purchase through ETS. So in the MOOC, in section 6.7, I believe it is, you can find links and a list of all these resources. So there's a lot out there for you to use to practice. Cool. All right, we've got another question. I believe this one is from Harvey. So let's see what Harvey wants to know.
Hi, I'm Harvey from China. I found a problem with the TOEFL independent speaking tasks. I found that for this task, the problem is often with developing ideas and recalling specific evidence instead of expressing them in English. Please, is there any suggestion for it?
Okay, glad you asked that, Harvey. It's a good question. A lot of people, I think, maybe wonder, how do I come up with something on the spot? How do I think of a response? So, Molly, what would you suggest?
Yeah, it is a good question. The good thing about the independent tasks, and for those of you who may not be familiar with them, these are tasks that don't have any additional reading or listening material, just asking you about your personal experience. So you can really draw on that personal experience when you're answering these questions. So take the preparation time to try to think of how something you've experienced relates to the question being asked. So for example, in the question 1, for the MOOC, it asks what your favorite genre of book is. So if you were to get that question, you might think, what's the favorite book of mine, or like the most recent book that I read? Faye, what's the most recent book you read?
Oh, I recently reread a book from the Harry Potter series. So I read the first Harry Potter book.
Harry Potter, good times.
Yeah.
Great. So once you think of that, you say, okay, fantasy. That can be my favorite genre. And then you have that example, something that's in your head right there that you can talk about and develop more in your response.
Yeah, great. That's a great idea. So if we think about the question type 2 then in the MOOC, which asks if you need to make mistakes in order to learn something, if that's the best way to learn. So Molly, what's something that you learned that you're proud of learning or was difficult to learn?
Well, I learned how to speak Spanish.
That's a big feat. So did you have to make any mistakes while learning Spanish?
A few.
A couple.
A few.
I think we can all relate to that. So if you were responding to that question, you could talk about learning Spanish and how you had to learn mistakes in order to make progress and learn the language. So that would be something from your personal experience you could talk about.
Yeah.
Great.
Good point.
All right. Thank you again, Harvey, for that question. And it looks like we've got a few more questions coming in through the comments, a lot of hellos. Let's see. Mel says hello from Turkey. So hello, Mel. We've got a hello from Bali, from, I'm probably going to say this wrong, and I'm sorry, Widhi. So hello. Let's see.
Just trying to pull this up.
Some other questions. Okay. We have someone from Cambodia who wants to speak English well and is wondering how. So Molly said you can, through the discussion boards in the MOOC, maybe you found people you can practice speaking with. You can use the online resources to help you practice. Let's see. Oh, Francisco says, I love Harry Potter too.
Okay, great.
I'm glad.
Read it in English if you haven't yet.
Yeah, read it
There
in
you go.
English, help you build your vocabulary, get more comfortable reading.
Leonard asked, do we have to provide 2 reasons and 2 examples for question 1? Don't think about so much following strict rules when you're answering these questions. You want to just be able to talk naturally about the topic and provide some examples and details to go along with whatever you're saying. But don't think that you have to have a certain structure to your response.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice and good to keep in mind.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep your hellos and questions and comments coming through. We'll move on to the next section of our tips for TOEFL success. And that next section is registration-related questions. So a question we get a lot, and that's pretty easy to answer, luckily, is how do I register for the TOEFL test? Molly, take it away.
Sure, it is a pretty easy one, Faye. You register online. We're actually going to share the website with you now where you'll go to register. Make sure when you do that you have your ID and a method of payment. And keep in mind that regular registration closes 7 days before your test date. So try not to leave it until the very last minute.
Yeah, that's good advice. And that way you can feel a little more relaxed going into it as well. So another question people often ask when they're planning out when they need to register and figuring out the timing of things is, how long does it take to get your scores? So after taking the test, Molly, about how long does it take?
Well, you're lucky. You won't have to wait too long to get your scores. After about 10 days, you will receive an email that will tell you that your scores are available. And then you can view your scores online by using the TOEFL IBT account that you set up when you registered for the test.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. So before we move on to the next section of our tips, we've got a few more hellos. So let's say hi back to a few people. Let's see. So Maya wants to know what this live event is about. So hello, Maya. And for anyone who's kind of jumping in right now, we're giving some tips for TOEFL test success. So we just talked about some tips for the speaking section and general planning resources and ways to get some practice in and online resources for the test. And we just talked about registration, and we'll also talk about some more planning abroad trips resources and answer your questions. So if you have questions, send them in. If you missed the first part of the feed, you can watch it later. But that's what's going on here. That's what we're doing. Let's see. Franklin says hello from Ecuador. Hi, Franklin. Mai says hello from Egypt. Hi, Mai.
Hi, Pablo from Chile.
Oh, let's see. All right. Just see if there's any other questions coming through. Oh, how long are the test results valid? Kamal wants to know. So they're valid for 2 years.
2 years after you take the test.
Yep.
So that's something to keep in mind when you decide when you want to take the test.
Yeah, when you're trying to plan. So that's good to know. Good question. Okay, so let's move on to the final segment, tips for planning your abroad journey. So Molly, how can people get started where do you begin?
Well, where do you begin? A good place to, well, when you're thinking about going abroad, you'll need to think about some different practical questions, such as how do I obtain a visa for the country where I want to study? How am I going to pay for school once I get there? A good place to start to think about these things is to go to the TOEFL Go Anywhere website. If you click on Plan and then click on Visa and Study Abroad Resources, there's a lot of good information in there for planning and living abroad. So that's a good place to start.
Great. And so what if, you want to go abroad, but you're not sure where? Is it still a good idea to take the TOEFL test and, get that out of the way, even if you're not sure where you're going to apply or send your scores?
Yes. Yes, you can take the test. You don't have to know exactly where you want to study before you take the test. So you can select up to 4 schools to have your scores sent. So when you register, you can select 4 schools before you take the test. But you can also order additional score reports after you take the test. So if you change your mind or you're not sure at the beginning, it's not a problem.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep. And like we said, 2 years after you take the test, your scores are valid.
Yep. Okay. Great. I think that wraps up the section on planning to go abroad. So I think some more questions are coming in here. Keep putting your questions in the comments. Let's see. Aisha wants to know, she says, hello, how are you? Hi, Aisha, we're doing great. And she wants to know how to improve her writing skills. So again, I think practice, practice, practice.
Sure.
If you have a friend who speaks English too, you can have them look at your writing. Finding someone to kind of have as a pen pal and write to them in English is a good way to practice. Definitely practice with TOEFL sample practice items and get some feedback. In the MOOC, during the writing week, you can actually answer some writing practice questions, and we select some of them and give some feedback and have the raters look at them. So that's a really great opportunity to practice your writing skills and get some feedback.
For sure.
What else do we have? Let's see. Zul from Indonesia says they're joining in. Hello, Zul. Mubashir has a question. How can I improve my understanding and listening skills? That's another one we get a lot.
Well, the good thing is that there's so many resources out there on the web, especially for you to find authentic English speakers. You can listen to things, listen to the radio, check out videos, movies,
podcasts,
music, podcasts. Just input as much as you can listen to, the better, and that's going to help you improve your vocabulary and feel more comfortable listening to people speak English.
Yeah, and actually I recently found out that when you're listening to podcasts, you can change the speed. So if you need to slow it down a little, you can slow it down. If you want to challenge yourself and speed it up a little, that can be a great way to practice listening and really hone your skills. So as Molly said, all these different resources to listen to, and just, listen as much as you can and try to get comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see a question here from Tani in Japan about pronunciation and its importance in the speaking section. So before you take the test, make sure you check out the scoring guide, the rubrics for the speaking test, and it explains to you what raters are listening for in your responses.
And you can find those in the MOOC.
Yes, they're in the MOOC,
week.
in the speaking week. So one aspect of what raters are listening for is your delivery, and if what you say is clear and easy to follow. So pronunciation comes in there, but the most important thing is that it be clear and that your response is comprehensible. Our raters are used to listening to speakers from around the world, and you won't be penalized for having an accent. People who have accents are definitely able to get the highest score as long as their responses are clear.
Yep, yeah. And we have another question about the speaking section. Louisa wants to know, do we have a notepad in the computer to take notes during the speaking section? So there's no notepad in the computer, but you can have a piece of paper and you can jot down some notes. So like Molly was saying, that's a good way to kind of plan and organize your response before answering the speaking question.
Right.
So you will be able to take some notes.
Yes.
Let's see. All right, we're getting a few more hellos. Sifat from Afghanistan says hello. Let's see. Another hello from Turkey. Hello, Enes. So I think that pretty much wraps up today's live stream, unless you see any other questions coming through right now.
There are a bunch more, and I think we'll get to them, answering them over the next few minutes.
In the comments. Yeah.
In the comments.
Yeah. So a reminder that we will be here for the remainder of the hour to answer all these other questions coming in. So keep sending them, and we'll be responding in the comments.
Yep.
So I think that wraps it up for the live portion of the live stream here with the video. So we hope that these tips have been helpful for you. And again, we want to wish good luck to our MOOC participants in the final week. And as I mentioned before, if you missed the MOOC or if you want to take it again, it starts again in May, on May 3rd, and you can register as early as March 7th, which is next week.
Wow.
Just a week from today.
Cool.
So thank you, Molly, for your insight and expertise.
Thank you.
And we'll be here in the comments, and we hope to see you all again soon.
Take care, guys.
Bye.